Hello, my name is Mohammed Kimji. Near the end of book number 6, Hector leaves Andromache, and she doesn't think that he is going to return from battle. In the meantime, Paris has put on his armor and he leaves his dwelling. This is right at the end of book number 6, at line number 503. Paris in turn did not linger long in his high house, but when he had put on his glorious armor with bronze elaborate, he ran in the confidence of his quick feet through the city, as when some stalled horse who has been corn-fed at the manger, breaking free of his rope, gallops over the plain in thunder to his accustomed bathing place in the sweet running river, and in the pride of his strength holds high his head, and the mane flows over his shoulders, sure of his glorious strength. The quick knees carry him to the loved places and the pasture of horses. So from uttermost Pergamos came in Paris, the son of Priam, shining in all his armor of war, as the sun shines, laughing aloud, and his quick feet carried him. Suddenly thereafter he came upon Hector. Paris is described as a horse, seems very handsome, bringing back his mane. He's not described as a lion. He's not described as an animal that is carnivorous. But when he meets Hector, Hector tells him that in fact nobody can dishonor his work in battle. He actually is a strong man. And we will see in book number 11, Paris will show his skills as an archer, and he's going to have magnificent success in that book. In book number 7, which is not one of the core books of the Iliad, but there are some fairly important plot details that I think you need to know. Hector and Alexandros, Hector and Paris do have some success on the battlefield at the opening of book number 7. And Athena, who is on the side of the Achaians, comes to Apollo, who is on the side of the Trojans. And Apollo tells Athena that for this one day, let's put an end to the fighting. And Athena asks, well, how are you going to do that? And Apollo says at line number 58, let us rouse up the strong heart in Hector, breaker of horses, if he might call forth some Danaan to do battle against him. Single man against single man in bitter combat. And Helenus, we know he is Hector's brother and he is a seer. He divines what the gods are contemplating. And he stands beside Hector. And he says at line number 47, Hector, O son of Priam, and equal of Zeus in counsel, would you now be persuaded by me, for I am your brother? Make the rest of the Trojans sit down, and all Achaians, and yourself call forth one of the Achaians, their bravest, to fight man to man against you in bitter combat. Since it is not your destiny yet to die and encounter fate, for thus I heard it in the speech of the gods, everlasting. And Hector will fight an Achaean one-on-one. Menelaus says that he is going to fight Hector, and Agamemnon will have none of it. He thinks that Hector is far stronger. He calls Menelaus mad. He says at line number 113, 113, even Achilles in the fighting where men win glory trembles to meet Hector. And he is far better, he tells his brother, than you are. So Menelaus will not be the one to encounter Hector. When Agamemnon says this, again, we have that language of bending the heart of his brother. This is what happened when he bent the heart of his brother, when Menelaus was moved by the apoina that Adrastos had offered to spare him his life in book number 6. This language of bending the heart, again, it is so incredibly foreign, alien to modern readers who encounter this text, but is consistent with the values in the text. There is no moral framework that you and I can relate to. Well, Nestor stands forth among the Argives and he scolds them. He thinks it's shameful that not a lot of people are courageous enough to challenge Hector, that everybody is cringing. And he remembers the time when he himself battled against the champion Eruthalion in a battle in Caledon. And Nestor says, that everybody was afraid to fight this champion. And it was only he himself who dared to fight him. And he did fight, and he killed Eruthalion, who was the tallest and the strongest, he says, at line number 155 of all of the heroes he has ever faced. Line number 162. We have now, after Nestor scolding a number of Achaean elite fighters who volunteer to fight Hector, Agamemnon, Diomedes, the two Iantes, Aias son of Telamon and Aias son of Oileus, Idomeneus, Meriones, Eurypylus, Thoas, Odysseus, all of these, we are told, were willing to fight against Hector. So they draw lots, or at least they put their lots into a container, and this container is shaken out by Nestor, and whose name comes out, or whose lot falls out? Aias, son of Telamon, which is very pleasing to the Achaians, because we know that Aias is considered to be the next strongest fighter after Achilles, and Achilles is not in battle. Aias will fight Hector. Hector is the first to throw his spear, and it strikes Aias' shield. We are told that it penetrates six folds of the shield, but was stopped at the seventh. Now, on this shield, you have different layers, and the seventh layer, we are told, is oxhide. So we have metal, and we have also animal hide that comprises the layers, different metals, and Hector's spear never penetrates through to the body. When Aias throws his spear, it crashes all the way through to the corselet of Hector. And Hector bends away and it misses him. And now at line number 256, we are told that Hector and Aias went at each other like lions who live on raw meat. We've seen this kind of imagery before. We saw this representation of Menelaus in book number 3 as a lion who, when he sees Paris, is like a lion that comes across a carcass of a goat or a stag. And in book number 4, we saw that Zeus tells Hera at the council meeting that she would not be happy until she is able to eat all of the Trojans raw. So there's something in common between the rage that you find among the heroes and the rage that you find among the gods and the rage that you find in predatory animals, a rage that is described in the similes that we looked at in terms of the rapacious hunger for raw meat. Hector now takes up a stone, huge stone, and he throws it at Aias, but can't penetrate Aias's shield. Aias is in all likelihood carrying a full body shield. When Aias takes up a stone also, a huge stone, and throws it at Hector, we are told that the shield breaks inward under the stroke of the rock like a millstone, and Hector's very knees gave so that he sprawled backward, shield beaten upon him. But at this point, Apollo lifts him up. Two heralds, Idaeus and Talthybius, step in at this point, and it seems to be nightfall, and the heralds hold their staffs between the two men and tell them to stop, not to go on, because night has come. And Hector and Aias no longer fight. At line number 313, maybe 314, Agamemnon dedicates an ox, a 5-year-old male, to Zeus. Here we have some details about what is involved in the sacrifice, and we have seen some details in prior books. But at 5:15, 5:16, they skin the victim, they butcher the carcass. 5:17, they cut up the meat expertly into small pieces, spitted them and roasted everything carefully. And taking off the pieces, they have a feast. Okay, so this is not a description of the sacrificial offering to the god, although the bull is dedicated, the ox is dedicated to the god. This is the description of the killing of an animal for a feast. Nestor at this point advises that they set a pause to the fighting in order to bury the unburied bodies. And to do that, they've got to go out into the field. They've got to go out into the battlefield and wheel in the corpses with mules and oxen. And then they have to burn the bodies. And then they have to take the bones and bring the bones of the dead to the children. At line number 336, and let us gather and pile one single mound on the corpse pyre. Pyre is a large heap of combustible material. This is what happens the pyre has to be prepared prior to the burning of the body. And let us gather and pile one single mound on the corpse pyre, this is at 336, indiscriminately from the plain, and build fast upon it towered ramparts to be a defense of ourselves and our vessels. And let us build into these walls gates strongly fitted, that there may be a way through them for the driving of horses. And on the other side, and on the outer side and close, we must dig a deep ditch circling it, so as to keep off their people and horses, that we may not be crushed under the attack of these proud Trojans. What Nestor is proposing is that in front of the Achaean camp, the Achaians build a giant wall as a protective barrier against Trojan attack. And beyond the wall, the Achaeans should build a ditch, deep, wide, and we will see that this ditch will have stakes in it. Ditches are very, very bad for horses. Horses don't have the lightness and the agility and the maneuverability to go down steep ditches and navigate through stakes in the ground and then climb up these steep embankments, ditches. And so this will be a highly effective defensive defensive strategy against to ward off Trojan attacks. One wonders, why was this not done in the first 9 years? But the text doesn't discuss that. Now, at an assembly of the Trojans, Antenor says, let's give back Helen and let's give back all of her possessions. And Paris refuses. He says at line number 362, I refuse straight out. I will not give back the woman, but if the possessions I carried away to our house from Argos, I am willing to give all back, and to add to these from my own goods. Now we know that in book number 3, Paris and Menelaus were to fight for Helen and all her possessions, and Agamemnon added a price. If Menelaus was the victor, the Trojans would have to pay a price that is fitting, which would come to serve as a standard. Here, Paris is not willing to give back Helen. Priam, the king, wants Idaeus, the herald, to speak to Agamemnon, Menelaus, to call a halt to the fighting, because he also wants to burn the bodies of the dead. So there is a common desire here on both the Achaeans' part and the Trojans' part to take a day to bury the dead. And Idaeus goes down and he speaks with Priam's message to the Danaans. Agamemnon. And he says in his speech to Agamemnon, which begins at 385, son of Atreus, and you other great men of all the Achaeans, Priam and the rest of the haughty Trojans have bidden me give you, if this message be found to your pleasure and liking, the word of Alexandros, for whose sake this strife has arisen, all those possessions that Alexandros carried in his hollow ships to Troy, and I wish that he had perished before then. He is willing to give all back, and to add to these from his own goods. But the very wedded wife of glorious Menelaus, he says he will not give, though the Trojans would have him do it. They told me to give you this message also, if you are willing, to stop the sorrowful fighting until we can burn the bodies of our dead. Diomedes doesn't want to accept any possessions from Alexandros. He doesn't want to take back Helen. And the Achaeans are on the side of Diomedes. Well, Agamemnon speaks to the herald and says that you've heard what the Achaeans think about that idea of Paris. But as far as taking a day to bury the dead, yes, we won't begrudge you that. Idaeus takes this message to Priam, and both sides gather the bodies. Both sides take the day to gather firewood. And they take the bodies, they put them into wagons. They pile their bodies on the pyre. They set the pyre alight, and they burn these bodies. At line number 433, but when the dawn was not yet, but still the pallor of night's edge, a chosen body of the Achaeans formed by the pyre, and they gathered together and piled one single mound all above it, indiscriminately from the plain, and built a fort on it. This is the wall that Nestor had advised, with towered ramparts, to be a defense for themselves and their vessels. And they built within these walls gates strongly fitted, that there might be a way through them for the driving of horses. And on the outer side, and against it, they dug a deep ditch, making it great and wide, and fixed sharp stakes inside of it. Stakes, not S-T-E-A-K, but stakes, S-T-A-K-E. Pointed spears. They're driven into the ground. Poseidon takes offense to the fact that the Achaeans are building this wall, because it will take away from the honor and the glory that he wants, because he actually, with Apollo, built the walls of Troy. And he is angry that the Achaean wall is going to live forever, and it's going to usurp the glory that belongs to Poseidon. It's going to be more important. It's going to live on in song. And so he says to Zeus, his brother, at line number 448, do you not see how these flowing-haired Achaeans have built a wall landward to their ships, and driven about it a ditch, and not given to the gods any grand sacrifice? Now the fame of this will last as long as dawnlight has scattered, and men will forget that wall which I and Phoebus Apollo built with our hard work for the hero Laomedon city. Laomedon was an old king of Troy, ancient king of Troy. And Zeus says, don't worry, after the Achaeans have left Troy, gone back to their ships, and back to the beloved land of their fathers, at that point you can break the wall to pieces and scatter it into the sea. At this point, the sun goes down at line number 465. And throughout that night, Zeus is sending these very inauspicious omens to the Achaeans that leaves them terrified. At line number 488, all night long, Zeus of the councils was threatening evil upon the Achaeans. In the terrible thunderstroke, green fear took hold of them. They spilled the wine on the ground from their cups, and none was so hardy as to drink. till he had poured to the all-powerful son of Cronos. They lay down thereafter and took the blessing of slumber. Now we will see in book number 8, this doesn't help them. Book number 8 is a day in which the Achaians will be driven to the brink of defeat after more than 9 years of fighting. The promise that Zeus had made Thetis to give honor to Achilles in book number 1, it's coming true. My name is Mohammed Kimji. If you would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, please do so. Thank you for your time.